there, I'm Miss Naldrit. Hopefully you know who I am. This video is to teach you what you need to do to get a good grade or a passing grade for standard 10.4. That's the standard we've been working on for this past week, okay? Now, 10.4 is all about words. It's about connotations of words and how you can use words on purpose to create meaning with your language and what you're writing, and how you can notice words to understand what tone and what important things are being said, what the author wants you to notice while you're reading. Please excuse the bird. I have to record these on the weekend, so. Now, let's jump right in, because I'm sure you're wondering what you can do to actually pass and get a good grade. And the thing you have to do is basically understand this idea that I'm going to explain to you in this video. And then I'm not that picky. I just need you to be able to show me that you understand what we're talking about. Okay. So, first of all, let's talk about the two words that I used at the beginning that you might not be familiar with yet. Okay? The words are connotation and tone. So when we look at the word connotation, I want you to notice that the beginning of this word is con. And in Spanish, con means with. So a great little thing to help you remember what connotation means is that it means the meaning that comes with a word, the part that makes it heavy. When it comes to words and language, they gain weight, they gain heaviness based on how we use them. If we use a word in a negative way enough, then those are the words that are like, wait, can you even say that? Isn't that not okay to say? When you use a word positively enough, it takes on that positive connotation. Every word has more than just the definition that it has written down. There's a difference between saying the word mommy and saying the word mother. One of them is more formal, and one of them is more informal. There's also a difference between saying baby and brat, right? One of those has a negative connotation, and you use it when you want to have a negative tone. The more words with a certain type of connotation you use, the more it builds up and creates this next word, which is tone. The tone of something is how it sounds, the feeling that the writer has about the subject. It's like their attitude about what they're writing. So we're going to do an example for this so that I can show you what you'll need to do to be able to really understand and describe these things. One of the things you can do to show me that you get this is going to be to look at a poem or even a piece of your independent reading book and to graph the tone of at least two words to show me that you first of all picked words to graph that are actually powerful words that have strong tones or strong connotations, and then you're going to graph the overall tone of that piece so you can see for yourself and show me that you know how that tone leads to, how those connotations lead to that tone. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Alright, in order to do this, I picked a poem, once again by Langston Hughes. So here we have the poem Harlem. I'm going to read through the poem one time, then I'm going to pick two words and show you how I graph them. Harlem. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Does it fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat or crust over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? So now I'm going to choose a line from that poem that is powerful, the one that I think really makes the tone of this poem what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and choose fester, like a sore, because, and this is important, the word that I notice the most, the word that I'm like, interesting. That's an interesting word that I don't hear very often. The less often you hear a word, if you hear a word that you're not familiar with, that's a great hint that that author had to think about that word. It wasn't on the tip of their tongue. They didn't think, oh yeah, I'm going to use that word. She said. They completely had to slow down and pick that word intentionally. So the word fester, we don't hear very often. It's when a wound starts to get ew and gunky and have pus on it. So I'm going to graph that word first. So you'll have a graph. They're in the classroom. You can totally find your own and follow along and graph your own word while I do this. So I'm going to take the word fester, and I start in the middle just like we do when we graph. And then I'm going to go for, is it positive or negative? And when I think about fester, I think about disease and grossness. So I'm definitely going to go over here to negative, and I'm going to go maybe this far. It's not math class, so you don't have to be exact. What we're doing is graphing feeling, and positive and negative is just a starting place. Next, we have to think about formal or informal. If it's formal, then you would hear someone use that in a business meeting. If it's informal, then you might be able to use it in a text. So when I think about fester, it's an older word, right? So usually you might think that would make it formal, but I don't think I would use it in a business meeting, so I don't think it's all the way up here. I would graph that one just a little bit above the line here, under negative and formal. And then I'm going to label so that you know and I know what word you graphed there. I'm going to write down fester. Fester. Okay? Next, I'm going to go with that same line, and I'm thinking about the word sore. And in this case, sore is used as like a thing, right? Because something can be sore. You can be like, oh, my arm is sore. Or it can be a sore, which means like a wound, something that's hurt, something that's been rubbed on, like maybe your shoe for too long, you've got a blister, that's a sore. So let's start here again. Is that positive or negative? I'm going to say it's pretty negative because it's literally being injured. I'm going to go over here, maybe around where fester is. Then is it formal or informal? A sore. Something about the way he's using that to me, it almost feels like a curse. It almost feels like we're supposed to be disgusted by it. And that makes me think it's more informal. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to graph it just under the line. Sore. Okay? So now that I've graphed two words, and remember this is just step one for understanding connotation because there's so much more that comes with this. When I read that word fester and I thought about like a wound and something gross, that's all part of connotation, right? So the next thing I have to do is graph the tone of the entire poem. Now, to graph the tone, I have to think about the meaning and how those words change that meaning. What is this author's opinion on a dream deferred? And deferred means put off, okay? And it sounds like Langston Hughes is not happy about putting off a dream. He thinks that is just disgusting. Looking at these words, disgusting, right? It's like something that just builds under your skin and it feels bad, or it explodes out of you and it really messes up your life. So when I have to graph the tone, and when we graph tone we're going to use a star, I'm going to go for definitely negative, right? And then formal and informal is a little tough, but I think he's talking directly to us. I think he's treating us like we are there to learn from him, and he's there to like talk to us at our level more. So I'm going to graph it all the way over here for negative, and I'm going to go a little bit on informal. And I'm going to label this Harlem because that's the name of the poem. Okay, this next part is important because now that we've understood what that tone and connotation mean to each other and how they're connected, you're going to need to practice and play with language a little bit. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. Now, number one, if you've been graphing this with your independent reading book, then what you're going to do is on your weekly reading quiz, you're going to answer that 10.4 question, and you're going to explain to me how these words here brought you to the tone of this piece, And then you're going to write a sentence telling me, hey, if he had used words like, let's look at this word here, crust and sugar over, like a syrupy sweet. Sweet could be a good thing. How could we have changed the tone from negative and disgusted to being a more positive thing? You're going to think to yourself, man, if Langston Hughes had used words like, and then you'll give me an example of some positive words, a dream deferred, instead of being a festering sore, could it have been a bubble of opportunity? A growing excitement? What words could he have used to create a more positive tone if we were looking for that, if he wanted to have a more positive tone? How could those words have changed that tone? You can totally explain that to me in that final piece. Another way that you can do this, if you're like, man, miss, I don't want to wait till Friday. I want to do this right now. I don't want to make up a reading quiz. I want to use my graph. I feel good about it. What you're going to do is take the place that fester is here. You're going to draw me an arrow, and you're going to replace it with a word here, just opposite, like a reflection, from here to here. And now you're going to give me a word that has a new meaning there, but that maybe could be, it's going to have a positive informal meaning, so it's not changing on formal, but it's going to be more positive. And I want you to come up with a word that has a similar meaning, but a more positive connotation. So in this case, let me think. For fester, I could use grow, right? Because to fester is when something hurts more and more and it builds, right? So I could replace that with something like build or grow. So I'm going to put build. Oops, I said grow. I'm going to put build or grow. And then I'm going to do the same thing for sore. So a sore, remember, that's a wound. So that might be hard to come up with something positive for, but let's see. I bet we can do it. I'm going to say scars, because a scar has a better connotation than a wound. Even though they're both things that happen to you, when we say scar, we tend to think of having survived something and overcome it, right? And if I need to make it even more positive, I could add a, like, daring or dashing scar, some type of modifier to show that I mean it in a positive way. But for this one, since we're not all the way in positive, I'm going to go with the scar. The next thing I'm going to do, because as fun as it would be if graph was the only thing I had to do, is you will turn over your page and explain to me how changing these two words can lead to creating a different tone, and what you would label the tone of this piece if all of the lines had the same type of tone as a line that says, or build and grow like scars. What new tone does that create in that poem? Why do you think that author chose to have a more negative tone instead of trying to do this positive tone? What did they want to get across to you? Why were they intentional about choosing the tone that they did, right? I need you to explain to me not only how these words led to tone, but why you think that author picked the tone they did. And please remember that you can choose any piece of writing you want to analyze this. Anything you see that you're like, wow, that's a word that they used. Why'd they say that? This is why we're building this skill. All right, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope someone does watch it. This is what you need to do to make up that grade for that 10.4 standard. You'll have other opportunities in class, I'm sure. So if you want to do it with the next text we read that you're actually here for, you're welcome to. This is a skill. It's not the specific assignment. I just need to know that you're thinking about words and language and how to use them on purpose. Thank you.